Ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. Donald Trump believes that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are a violation of civil rights. He, in fact, believes that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a violation of civil rights. On January 21st, 2025, Donald Trump signed an executive order eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs for his own employees, federal government employees, and strongly encouraging private companies to eliminate their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs as well. And just like the slaves were not freed because this country suddenly developed a conscience, and the slaves were freed because of capitalism, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs were established because of capitalism. None of these companies woke up one day and said, you know what? We've been excluding a lot of people of color. We've been excluding a lot of people in the LGBTQIA community. We've been excluding a lot of people with disabilities. And it's time we did more for them. It's time that we be more inclusive when it comes to them. Those diversity, equity, and inclusion programs were established after companies were called out for being grossly exclusive, for excluding marginalized people, people of color, LGBTQIA, people with disabilities. So once we looked at their executives and their employees and their models, and we recognized how exclusive they were and how we were not represented as marginalized groups by those companies, and we decided, hey, you know what, maybe I'll take my money elsewhere. You know, in the makeup community, you know, there was this whole big thing with Tarte. Tarte Cosmetics has been called out many times for being non-inclusive. Other companies have been called out for being non-inclusive, you know, not offering a wide enough range of shades of makeup, not offering makeup, lipstick that was opaque enough to cover dark lips. So once these companies were exposed for being exclusive, in order to keep our dollars coming, they said, what can we do? How can we be more inclusive to keep our customers shopping with us? None of these programs were established because these companies developed a conscience. As consumers started to realize how exclusive certain brands were, other brands started to become more inclusive, offering a wider range of makeup shades, offering more opaque lipsticks that work better with darker lips. And then consumers started to share amongst each other, you know, it started to trend on social media like, you know, we don't have to accept this from them because there are Black-owned makeup brands. Black-owned makeup brands started to trend and their business started to increase because of how exclusive certain brands had become. So in an effort to attract their customers back, certain companies became more inclusive, you know, because we were sharing on social media, you know, like, we don't have to take this from Tarte. Y'all realize that there is Pat McGrath, right? You know, we don't have to take this from, let's say, I don't know, Maybelline. You know, there is Fenty Beauty, right? I remember when Fenty Beauty first hit Sephora and the range of the shades was all over social media trending like, Rihanna, you did your big one, sis, because she came straight out the gate being so inclusive and offering so many different shades. So these companies did not develop a conscience and say, you know what? We want to do more for our consumers of color. We want to do more for these marginalized groups. They say, you know, we like to get those dollars back from those marginalized groups. How can we be more inclusive in order to attract them back? Black people alone spend more than $1 trillion a year in this country. And that's not including Latino people. That's not including the LGBTQIA. That's not including Asian people. That's not including people with disabilities. And diversity, equity, and inclusion programs benefit all of those groups of people. January 21st, 2025, Donald Trump signed an executive order to eliminate all diversity, equity, inclusion programs and for his own employees and the federal government. And he strongly encourages private companies to do the same, to eliminate their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, calling them a violation of civil rights. In his executive order, he says that his attorney general will be meeting with the heads of some larger companies to strongly encourage them to eliminate their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. He also lays out some possible consequences if they don't do what he says. If they don't eliminate their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, he says that they might face some litigation. Because see, when you're a white man who borrowed a couple $1 million from your father to start your first business, maybe you can have this belief that people are hired based on their qualifications. You know, merit-based hiring is a real thing. But for the members of those marginalized groups, I think we all know that that's not true. George Floyd's death was life-changing for many people in this country, even those who did not know him. And that's why he was kind of held as a hero, and the other people hate to see that, hate to hear that. But after George Floyd's death, a lot of people of color opened their eyes, or it was a reminder to how we are perceived in this country, or the value of our life in this country. So we took this stance that because our lives are not valued, that certain companies shouldn't have our dollars. If you don't value our lives, you don't need our dollars. You know, you're not going to value our lives more than you value our dollars. So there were blackouts. There were a lot of organizations calling for blackouts. Don't spend your money with this company. Don't spend your money on this day. Let's not spend money for this amount of time. And I did a little bit of research into DEI programs, both by Target and Walmart, just because they're two really huge companies that have been in the news kind of about Trump's, DEI programs and all of that. So what I found is that they both increased their DEI initiatives after George Floyd's death. After we decided that because these companies in this country does not value our life, that they shouldn't get our dollars, they trumped up. They increased their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, programs. Well, I'll say it again. None of these diversity, equity, and inclusion programs were established because these people developed a conscience. These diversity, equity, and inclusion programs were established because they wanted our money. So as we watch which of these companies decide to roll back their DEI programs, we should be taking notes. We should be taking notes and making changes accordingly as far as what companies we give our time, dollars, and attention to. I think we all know by now that complaining doesn't change anything. And most of us have lost our faith in our democratic process in this country, and we don't even feel like voting actually changes anything. But we know what does. The almighty dollar changes everything. The minute we take our money away from these companies, they start to dance to our tune. It's important that we remember that. I went and looked up, did a little bit of research in the EEOC website. And the EEOC takes complaints about any kind of discrimination in the workplace by any demographic of people. So if at any time there was a white person, a white male, who felt that he didn't get a job because a black woman got it because she was a diversity hire. If at any time there was a white woman who felt that she was fired for being a white woman and they wanted to put a black woman in her position, or a Mexican, they could have easily filed a complaint with EEOC and had the company investigated. Nothing was ever stopping them from reporting any time that they felt discriminated against because they were white.